Inspired by W.B. Yeats' poem Where Fairies Lure a Child from Home to the Waters and the Wild, Keith Donohue's 2006 novel The Stolen Child imagines that the ancient legend of goblin changelings continues in 1960s small-town America. Early in the novel, a switch occurs. A human boy is replaced by a changeling, and the story alternates between their perspectives. One narrative follows the boy, Aniday, who is transformed into a goblin, and the other traces the changeling who assumes Henry's identity. These alternating chapters often recount shared events from their different viewpoints, as their fates intertwine. 7-year-old Aniday feels disconnected from his family, burdened by his distant father, distracted mother, and twin baby sisters. One summer night, as Henry dreams of running away, he unknowingly becomes the target of goblins, beings who seek out children sensitive to the world's sorrows. After climbing into a hollow tree, Henry is ambushed. The goblins bind him with cobwebs and vines and throw him into a river, completing a magical transformation that turns him into one of them. Simultaneously, the goblin leader painfully reshapes himself into Henry's double, taking the boy's place in his family. From that moment, the real Henry becomes Aniday, a goblin, while the changeling assumes Henry's life. The novel then splits its focus between Aniday and the changeling. Aniday begins to learn about his new existence among the goblins, who at first seem like wild, feral children living in the woods. These creatures never age and once considered themselves powerful fairies, though they now reject that title. They refer to themselves as goblins, miserable beings with deformed bodies. Despite their diminished state, they retain some magical abilities, including extraordinary speed and the power to occasionally revive animals killed by cars. Like Aniday, each goblin was once a stolen child, and their leader is always the oldest changeling. However, not all goblins are content with this fate, especially when the only way to reclaim a human life is by condemning another child to their own cursed existence. This tension comes to a head when one goblin leader chooses to end his life rather than continue the cycle. As Aniday adjusts to his new identity, he forms deep bonds within the goblin tribe, particularly with a female goblin named Speck. She helps him retain fragments of his past life, giving him paper and pencil to record his memories and thoughts. Through this act of writing, Aniday begins to reconstruct his identity, merging his old self with the goblin he has become. Speck also helps Aniday discover the public library, where he constructs a hidden lair beneath it. This secluded spot becomes his sanctuary and favorite place in the world. Meanwhile, the changeling now living as Aniday tries to navigate his new human life, but his early interactions at school leave him disillusioned. He views his classmates with disdain, seeing them as nose-pickers, thumbsuckers, snorers, ne'er-do-wells, and misses the broader, more magical life he once had. Though he looks like Henry, his personality is strikingly different, a fact that does not go unnoticed by Henry's father, who grows increasingly uneasy. One major difference between the real Henry and the changeling is the new Henry's exceptional talent for playing the piano, a skill he never had before. While his family is mesmerized by his musical abilities, his father becomes suspicious, sensing that this Henry might not be his real son. When he confides these fears to his wife, she refuses to accept the possibility, though her reasons remain unclear. Unable to shake his doubts, Henry's father spirals into alcoholism, eventually leading to his suicide. As Aniday matures, he begins to recall not just his time as a goblin, but also memories of an earlier life. He remembers being a piano prodigy taught by a beloved German music teacher. Through his music, Henry starts to unravel his identity, torn between the stolen boy he once was, the centuries-old goblin he became, and the new person he is now. Over time, Henry becomes a successful pianist and composer, marries a woman named Tess, and has a son, Eddie. However, he is haunted by the fear that his own child might be kidnapped and replaced by goblins, a nightmare that continues to plague him. Eventually, Henry uncovers his original identity. He was once a boy named Gustav Ungerland. Despite this revelation, he feels incapable of sharing the truth with Tess, and his inability to be open with her causes their relationship to lack the depth he longs for. Aniday and Aniday live their lives in mutual resentment, each feeling trapped in a life that doesn't fully belong to them. Aniday, growing increasingly isolated, decides to leave the goblin tribe permanently and reside under the library. Despite the hardships, he reflects on his time with the goblins as the best years of my life. Meanwhile, Aniday composes a symphony titled The Stolen Child, structured in movements that represent awareness, pursuit, lamentation, and redemption. The novel concludes ambiguously when the two finally confront one another. Henry finds Aniday in his secret, book-filled lair, and Aniday later watches Henry perform his symphony. Both characters seem to be grappling with their double lives, trying to find closure. As they struggle to say goodbye to their fractured identities, it remains uncertain whether either will find happiness in the end. I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave a like if you did, and be sure to subscribe. Thank you.